Every global empire has a shelf life of exactly 95 years. It is a mathematical heartbeat that has pulsed through history for 5 centuries. Today, the US dollar is currently at year 81, and the cracks aren't just appearing, they are exploding. Most people think the dollar in their pocket is real money. They think it has value because the government says so. They're wrong. It is a sophisticated, 80-year-old experiment in trust, and it is currently failing its final stress test. To understand why the clock is ticking, you have to know about the invisible crown. Think of it as a trophy. Whoever holds this trophy gets to make the rules for the whole world. They get to decide who gets rich and who stays poor. For 500 years, this trophy has been stolen, traded, and lost in a cycle that never changes. It is a game of musical chairs played by empires, and the music is about to stop. Portugal had it. Spain had it. The Dutch had it. Britain had it. And now, the United States has it. Every one of them thought they were special. Every one of them thought they would keep the trophy forever. And every single one of them was wrong. Tonight we pull back the curtain on the secret patterns of history. We are going to look at the 4 stages of a dying empire: the rise, the peak, the greed, and the inevitable fall. We are going to see how the world's most powerful nations destroyed themselves from the inside out. The clock is ticking. This is the autopsy of an empire. Our story begins in the year 1450. Portugal. Back then, the world was a very different place. If you wanted spices like pepper or cinnamon, you had to pay a fortune to middlemen who traveled over dangerous deserts. But Portugal was like a small kid with a big secret. They stopped looking at the land and started looking at the invisible currents of the ocean. They figured out how to sail across the Atlantic better than anyone else. They mastered the wind. Because they owned the roads of the sea, they owned the world's trade. For 80 years, their coin, the real, was the only one people trusted. It was the first world currency. But success is a dangerous drug. Portugal got too big for its boots. They tried to build forts and trading posts on 4 different continents. Imagine trying to guard 10 houses when you only have enough people to guard 1. They spent all their profits just trying to keep their borders safe. They ran out of money trying to act like a giant, and by 1580, their time was up. They were the first to prove that you can be the king of the world on Monday and a memory by Tuesday. Next came Spain, and Spain won the biggest lottery in human history. They arrived in South America and found a mountain called Potosi. It wasn't just a mountain of rock, it was literally made of silver. For 100 years, Spain flooded the world with pieces of 8. These were the first truly global coins. You could spend them in China, Europe, or the Americas. But Spain fell into the most famous trap in history. We call it the lottery winner's doom. Think about what happens when someone wins $100 million. Usually they stop working. They stop learning new skills. They just spend, and spend. That was Spain. Because they had so much free silver coming from the mountain, they stopped making things for themselves. They bought everything from their neighbors. Eventually, the silver started to run out. But Spain's spending didn't. They owed so much money to other countries that they went broke. 4 separate times. Even with a mountain of silver in their backyard, they couldn't pay their bills. By 1640, the Spanish Empire was a hollow shell, crushed by its own greed. We are halfway through the autopsy of the dollar, but the patterns we are uncovering go even deeper than you think. If you find this breakdown of power and history insightful, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Invisible Empires. We don't just tell stories here. We reveal the systems of control that most people never see. By subscribing, you're joining a community of people who refuse to look away from the truth. Share this video with someone who needs to wake up to the reality of the global economy. Now, let's return to the moment the bankers took control. By 1640, the trophy moved to the Dutch Republic. The Dutch were the nerds of the money world. They didn't find silver. They invented things. They created the first stock market, the first big banks, and the first global corporations. They realized that if you control the banks, you control the kings. For almost 100 years, the Dutch guilder was the world's bank account. But the Dutch fell into the same trap as Portugal. They spent all their savings on wars to protect their trade routes. By the time they realized they were broke, it was too late. A new power was rising across the water. Britain. Britain took the trophy in the 1720s. For 200 years, the British pound was the king of coins. They had the steam engine, the factories, and the biggest navy the world had ever seen. But here is the invisible truth you need to remember. A country can look powerful on the outside, even when it's rotting on the inside. Britain actually stopped being the #1 economy in the world in the 1870s, but everyone kept using their money for another 70 years. Why? Because people hate change. It's like staying on an old social media app just because all your friends are there, even if the app is broken. But then came the World Wars. Britain spent every penny they had to survive. By 1945, they were like a rich man who had lost his house, his car, and his job. At a secret meeting in 1944, the United States sat Britain down and said, "We will help you survive, but you have to give us the trophy." Britain had no choice. The American century had begun. For the first 25 years, the U.S. told the world, "You can trust our dollar because we have a basement full of gold to back it up." And for a while it worked. But by 1971, the U.S. had spent too much money on the Vietnam War and big government projects. Other countries started getting suspicious. They started asking for their gold back. But the U.S. didn't have enough gold left. So, President Nixon went on TV and told a giant lie. He said the U.S. was temporarily stopping the gold standard. It has been over 50 years, and we are still waiting for it to come back. The world was terrified. Why should they trust a piece of paper that wasn't backed by anything? So the U.S. made a secret, invisible deal with Saudi Arabia. The deal was this: "We will protect your oil fields with our massive army, but you must promise to only sell your oil for U.S. dollars. This was a genius move. Since every country on earth needs oil to drive cars, run factories, and keep the lights on, every country had to buy dollars. This is what we call the petrodollar. It made the dollar the most important thing on earth. It allowed the U.S. to overspend for 50 years because the rest of the world was forced to keep needing more dollars just to survive. But there's a catch. Every empire reaches a point where they think the rules don't apply to them. It's called the world's credit card trap. To keep the global system running, the U.S. has to keep printing dollars and sending them all over the world. But the more they print, the more the dollar loses its value. It's like watering down a bowl of soup. The more water you add, the less it tastes like soup. Today, the United States owes $36 trillion. That's a number so big that if you tried to count it, $1 every second, it would take you over 1 million years to finish. The U.S. is now like a person who has 50 credit cards and is using one to pay off the other. And in 2022, the U.S. made a fatal mistake. They got into a fight with Russia and decided to freeze Russia's money. They basically pressed a button and deleted Russia's bank account. This sent a shockwave through the world. Every other country, China, India, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, looked at that and realized, wait a minute, if the U.S. can delete Russia's money, they can delete our money too. Suddenly, holding U.S. dollars didn't feel like being rich. It felt like being on a leash. We are 81 years into a 95-year cycle. The clock is nearing midnight. The signs are everywhere. The U.S. owes more money than it can ever pay back. The U.S. Army is spread too thin, trying to guard 900 bases in 130 different countries. And most importantly, other countries are starting to say, no thanks, to the dollar. They are building their own roads for money that the U.S. cannot control. History is like a song. It doesn't repeat the same words, but it has the same beat. And right now, the beat is slowing down. Transitions of power don't usually happen in one day. They happen slowly, Then, all at once. When the British pound fell, it didn't just drop. It vanished from the top spot and never came back. The invisible empire of the dollar is nearing the end of its song. We aren't moving to a world where one country rules everything. We are moving to a world where many different countries share the power. The question isn't whether the system will change. The question is, are you ready for what comes next? The patterns of money and power we've seen today didn't start in 1944. They started in the backrooms of Florence, Italy, with a family that understood the secret of banking before anyone else. To understand how the game truly began, you need to watch our next documentary, Money, Power, and Murder, The Medici's Story. You can find the link in the description or click the end screen now. If you want to stay ahead of the patterns and see the truth before it becomes the news, make sure you're subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on. Your support allows us to keep digging deeper. Subscribe to Invisible Empires. Keep your eyes open. The clock is ticking.